and welcome to our very first LinkedIn Live webinar. I'm Gauri Sharma, Analytics Lead here at 2020 Systems, and I'm very excited to be hosting today's session about what's driving growth in CPG and retail. If you don't know who we are 2020 Systems. We are a technology and consulting company headquartered in New Jersey. I'm dialing in from New Jersey, and before we dive in, we'd love to know where everyone's joining us from. So if you can please drop in your city, state, or country in the chat, and welcome everyone. It's great to see such a diverse group of people joining us today. Today we're going to talk to some of the experts in the industry about the CPG landscape. Innovation as a growth driver to customer experiences at 2020 Systems and unlocking new growth through AI and data. We have a lot to cover today, and we definitely want to hear from you. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat as we go along, and we will tackle them towards the end during the Q&A session. So joining me today is Brian Berlin. Hello, Brian.
Hey, Corey.
Board and Strategic Advisor for Data Management, Analytics, and Shoppers. Brian is a veteran in the beverage alcohol industry, having led category management teams, shopper insights, and data analytics divisions at Beam Suntory and Constellation Brands. And I've had a great privilege to work with Brian. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Corey.
We also have Akhil Wahiduddin. Hi, Akhil, AI strategist focused on marketing analytics. Welcome, Akhil. Akhil has spent more than a decade in the CPG and retail space, supporting over 25 clients nationwide. And I've also had a privilege to work with Akhil. So thank you for joining me, Akhil.
Thank you.
And of course, finally, we have Shyam Jayakumar, our founder and CEO at 2020 Systems. Hello, Shyam.
Hi, Gauri. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you all for joining. And with that, let's get started and dive right into today's topics. We'll start. Brian, thank you for joining today again. Given your experience, can you talk about some of the key challenges that the CPG industry is facing today and how they have differed from the challenges in the past?
The challenges that CPG faces today. Well, I've been thinking about this, and I don't think it was ever easy to build brands in the world of CPG, right? You've always had challenges connecting brands with consumers to solve consumers' problems. But I feel like the challenges that brands face today are probably greater than ever before, and a lot of that comes down to just how fast things are changing, right? You have rapid change in technology. Technology is evolving. I mean, literally every day you read articles about new technologies that companies need to address. And frankly, it doesn't matter if you're a big company or a mid-sized company or a small company. If you are not staying on top of how technology is changing, you're falling behind, right? Because if you're not doing it, competitors are out there doing it. So you have to stay on top of that technology. And then, just as important as that is the consumer and how fast they're changing, how fast their preferences. They're looking for new tastes, new flavors, new styles, new everything, which essentially is in the world of CPG. We've trained them to do that, right? So, but you have to stay on top of that. Like if you're a company and you're trying to meet the needs of these consumers, you have to be in the world of changing products to get them those products that are changing. And of course, on top of all of that, all that sits under this umbrella of inflation, right? Which has been driving up prices for everybody, which means that consumers who don't have unlimited funds need to be more selective about where they're spending their money in which categories. So I think a way for manufacturers and retailers to start to think about navigating through all of these changes is by thinking about macro trends, right? These are long-term trends, right? These are trends that consumers are settled in. While their individual tastes and what they're seeking might change pretty rapidly, they tend to fall under these macro trends. So if you're a manufacturer and you're thinking about these macro trends and that's how you're approaching your business, it can offer you kind of a roadmap, right? So a couple of these trends that I think are worth mentioning. One is health and wellness, right? We know consumers want to buy products that are healthier for them, or at least that they perceive to be healthier for them. Another one is product customization, right? Like now, everybody is different. Everyone's unique. So they all want products that are unique to them.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's really unique to them or just perceived, right? There's a definite shift in today's world towards e-commerce, right? Convenience seems to drive everything. And as convenience drives everything, like there's really nothing more convenient in a shopping experience than going online, clicking a button, buying a product, and having it delivered later that day. That's about as convenient as you get. But and maybe an extension of that, not always as part of e-commerce, but is manufacturers going direct to consumers, right? They're developing these relationships right with consumers and cutting the retailer out completely. So, and then of course, people are spending so much time online in today's environment.
Can you give us some example? Like, what are the advantages, to the and challenges that?
Right. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So we've got, we'll talk about health and wellness, right? Because both, all of these macro trends create opportunities and challenges. So let's talk about health and wellness, right? So health and wellness is a macro trend. It's a long-term trend, right? So if you're a manufacturer creating brands and if you're trying to meet the changing consumer needs, if you're doing it under the umbrella of health and wellness, it can give you like a, 12-month, 18-month, maybe 3-year roadmap to create products. So you're not innovating by pivoting here to here to here and trying to meet all the different fads that are out there. You have an actual roadmap that you're trying to invest towards. And often when you're creating these innovations, you're doing it at higher price points, which can improve your margins, right? So there's a lot of benefits to having a long-term view on how you're creating innovation and driving up your profitability. But there's also some risks, right? First of all, innovation requires big investments. You're spending a lot of money investing in that space. But also, we know that not all innovations are successful. Like most innovations aren't successful. So, you really have to lean in to data to help you navigate where you're going to innovate and what that innovation is going to look like.
Yeah. Oh, that's so important. And can you give us an example of an innovation that, it's a successful innovation that changed the category's dynamics, right? And
actually, maybe before we go there, Gore, I want to talk about e-commerce and direct to consumer a little bit more. I want to talk about that. So, e-commerce, we know that it's really convenient. And if you're a retailer and you are leaning into e-commerce, you are making your customer, giving them a better experience. So there's a great advantage to building your brand in that environment. But on the flip side of that, if you're operating brick and mortar stores, it's pretty expensive. It costs a lot more to have physical stores with all of that inventory and employees that are customer facing. So it puts a lot of pressure. The bigger e-commerce gets, the more pressure it puts on brick and mortar stores. But then there's direct to consumer. And I think this is really important to talk about. If you're a manufacturer, there's a lot of benefits to going direct to consumer, right? First is that you're going to build long-term, deeper relationships with your customers, right? You're going to build these relationships directly with your customers. Hopefully you're going to give them great experiences. Maybe it's just more convenient. Maybe it's a really customized product, right? But I think more important than any of that is it's going to give you the ability to harvest really critical first-party data. And in a world where data is everything, where we have more data than we know what to do with, first-party data is really important because you're going to use that data down the road to really develop and nurture your one-on-one relationships with these consumers over time. And if you're not developing that first-party data in basically every consumer interaction that you have, then you are definitely falling behind. Right, that first-party data is going to help you talk to consumers with better targeted messages in the right place down the road. And if you're not doing it, your competitors are, and you will definitely fall behind. But there's also other challenges to direct-to-consumer, and that's that you're cutting out the retailer. And I think it's worth mentioning that when you're cutting out the retailer, you rely on them for a lot of revenue, and if you're cutting them out of a big portion of your sales, that may create a lot of tensions with them. So I'm sorry, you wanted an example of innovation.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example of innovation out of the beverage alcohol category. About 10 years ago, a handful, two, really smart beer suppliers. They didn't actually both necessarily make beer, but they were in that category. Invented a whole new category called hard seltzers, right? And basically the brands were White Claw and Truly, and they came out, around 10 years ago, and consumers liked them, right? Like these manufacturers, they were looking at consumers online, and what they saw was consumers were drinking vodka and sodas and on premise in bars and restaurants, and they were like, wow, we could probably put that in a can. And we don't even need to put vodka in it. So like our prices can be lower, right? So they went out and they created this, and consumers flocked to it. And the category started growing and growing and growing. And pretty soon within the beer category, every brand was like, how do I get a piece of that growing pie? So they're putting resources into creating these products. Like you literally have a product called Bud Light Hard Seltzer, right? It's not beer, but it says Bud Light on it, right? So you have all of these products. And then you had wine suppliers and spirit suppliers say, well, wait a minute, maybe we can get a piece of that pie, right? Wine guys are like, I could put wine in a can and put some bubbles in there. But the spirit suppliers are like, wait, they're making vodka and sodas and they don't even have vodka. I actually make vodka. So we saw a complete new category in beer with hard seltzers. And then this absolute explosive growth in the spirits category from the ready to drink category, where they started with vodka and sodas. And then the next thing you know, there's like tequila and sodas. And then pretty soon you've got margaritas in a can, right? All the way up to like high-end bourbon brands, like pre-mixed Manhattans for like $40 in a bottle ready to drink. But I invite anybody here to, if you really want to understand how big this innovation is, walk into any store that sells beverage alcohol and count the number of margaritas in a can, and you will be floored by it. And of course, the challenge to this, it created a whole new category of sales. And it generated a lot of revenue and a lot of profit for retailers and distributors and for manufacturers. It did create a lot of challenges, right? So I think the biggest challenge is it was a lot of new items, right? It was dozens of brands, maybe more than dozens of brands, hundreds and hundreds of new items, all needing to find a space on a retailer's shelves. And those retailers have finite shelf space. They can't expand their shelves. The stores are only so big. So for every new item that goes onto a shelf, something else has to come off the shelf, right? Or the space for that brand gets reduced, right? And some of those brands that might be impacted by all these new products coming in sell pretty well, right? So a retailer, by taking on some of these new items, runs the risk of damaging some pretty good sales from existing products. And it creates a problem. And this is where manufacturers and distributors really leaned into data to step in and solve some of these problems. So like in the beverage alcohol business, beer distributors built massive, they invested a lot of money and built really powerful analytical tools to help navigate this really complex item environment, right? And they have so they might have 10 suppliers, tell them that there's 100 new items that need to be introduced in a month, right? And a retailer just can't take 100 new items in a month. So these distributors can actually use these analytical tools to walk into a retailer and they can say, look, I got 100 items I'm supposed to sell you, but here's the 10 that really matter. And that's a big benefit to the retailer because they don't have to cut items that actually do well for them, to carry items that might not do well for them. They're likely to take items that are actually going to drive a good return on their investment. So it minimizes their financial risk. But it also benefits the suppliers in the sense that they don't have to actually navigate the really complex layer of stores that are out there. But the real message here is that no matter where you are in the route to market, you need to be thinking about data as a solution, right? You need to be thinking about how to take data from reporting, looking back at what has happened. It's always important. You need to be able to do that, right? But you need to start leaning into collecting different data sets that help you be more predictive, that help you start to predict where your best distribution is going to be, where consumer trends are headed, where flavor trends are headed. And in every activity that you're putting out there, thinking about how to collect that data so you can apply those predictive analytics to make your business more efficient. Because if you're not doing it, There is a competitor that you have that is doing it.
Yeah, no, this is great. And thank you for your insights on this innovation and the data, which is a great segue to what Akhil is going to talk about. So let's hear more on this data collection and strategy from Akhil's perspective. So, Akhil, with so many challenges, facing the CPG industry, and especially what Brian was talking about, given the premiumization and health, how do you think companies are dealing with the massive amounts of data, the fragmented data especially, right? And how do you think it's impacting like marketing analytics and insights?
Got it. Thanks, Gauri, and thanks everyone for taking your time to attend. That's like $1 million question, right? Like a lot of times organizations have is this data everywhere, not a drop to drink. How do we deal with this situation? Yeah, I think one word that comes to mind is it's fragmented and it's siloed. And why I say that is because having supported 40 plus clients across the country over the last 15 years, I keep seeing that every vendor that provides the data set and every department within the organization that consumes the data set, they all have their comfort zone. So it's almost like it has gotten into a circle of situation where it's siloed by choice or by the dynamics of the industry. But at the end of the day, organizations are not able to tap into the benefit of leveraging data through one lens. And what I mean by that, let's take an example from one of the trends Brian has talked about, innovation, right? For the sake of time and focus, we'll take innovation as a clean example here. When you talk about innovation, you need so many data sets. You need historic data set in the marketplace. You need retailer level information. You need information, qualitative things like surveys, a shopper journey, both brick and mortar and online. You need agency data set, like what did we do in terms of marketing and targeting. Then comes the whole world of internal data set, financial margins, operations, supply chain. You start looking at all of this data set. Organizations typically have a nicely integrated data set within each function. Marketing has their own comfort zone, innovation has their own comfort zone, same thing with the supply chain. But nobody looks at it in one lens. And that's where I think today we're dealing with this. As fragmented the data set it is right now, because of all the omni-channel marketing and fast-paced innovation, scalability, and everything, it is also a great opportunity that we have the technology to one, integrate the data, and two, leverage the Gen AI to do the analysis work. So you have one lens of data set and you have one robust overall well blended analysis to give you the insights and actions that takes into account all the departmental constraints or guardrails that you have. One example I'll take here. Sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, so just focusing on this one challenge, right? Specifically driving growth through innovation. So how are brands addressing this challenge, and or how do you recommend brands address this challenge?
Um, I'll stay with the innovation again here, just for being able to have some
Yeah.
continuity. We'll take one example so audience can actually think through this process, right? I had a beverage client that was doing phenomenally well over the last 5 years, but their focus was bottled beverages, self-stable refrigerated in the kids section, and they wanted to really venture into the non-alcoholic adult beverages, catering to the entire family, and they had significant investment available to make that happen. So innovation was their key growth driver. How did we go about doing this? In this case, um, three use cases come to mind, right? First thing is, how do you look through all the data set and identify white space opportunity? Like, what is the big size of price out there? Is that even relevant to us? Do we have the capabilities to go through that and compete in the marketplace? And they decided not to play in the hardcore energy drinks, nor in the cola side, nor in the full fruit juice. Somewhere in the middle, the sweet spot that has sizable growth, trends, and momentum for them to tap into. And all of this requires things from thought leadership to internal and all the data set I just listed about, right? So once they identify that, then they need to know whom do we target, what is the persona of the consumer we are going to go after, and how do we personalize and target them. And when we talk about personalization, I know Brian gave a nice story about um, personalization and experiential marketing. One of the product that comes to mind here is Liquid IV. I mean, our client was focusing on thinking about both bottled ready to drink as well as powdered drinks. But Liquid IV is already like showing that short spurt of burst of big success in a short time. How? Because they cater to multiple functional needs like gut health, immune health, energy side. And that was like, if you think about it, for customers, it was a bit personalized offering. Not only that, they went about doing, you can bundle your own composition of energy packets and make it a well-rounded, different day parts, different times of the week, they might have different needs. All of these things don't happen in vacuum. You really know that consumers are looking for all these things and you target them. These all came from a very well-rounded holistic approach to data set, and being at the right marketplace with the right audience and the right day parts and offering them the functional need that they really were looking for.
Yeah.
So from targeting to product innovation to actually supply chain in terms of optimization with the distribution channels, you need data set for all of these things.
Yeah, no, we definitely want to continue having this conversation with you. But before we get deeper into this, want to hear from Sham what he sees or what we see at 2020 from the customer's perspective.
Hey, thanks, Corey. As Brian and Akhil had already pointed out, the CPG sector has its own unique challenges, right? Particularly around the fragmented data coming from various sources, be it from retailers or suppliers, distributors, manufacturers, and consumers. So, on one hand, we spoke about the explosion of data, right, from digital channels. On the other hand, there is like the rapid changing consumer behavior. And CPG companies have to continue to innovate at a different speed and scale compared to even a decade ago. Brian spoke about this briefly, right? I mean, they have to innovate daily, they have to change and evolve daily, and otherwise they are going to be left behind in the race. And I saw a recent McKinsey study that touched on this, and they said, hey, CPG companies are trailing behind the retailers and consumers in terms of capturing and surfacing of the value from digital initiatives and AI. So technology and data plays a very vital role in this race. Consumers have become more open to adopting modern and disruptive technologies that can deliver to the speed and scale needs of their business while they continue to innovate within their respective categories. So, for example, adopting a modern data stack that can help them create data products that can be consumed by any downstream a system or a process or applications or bots or models, language models, or or even enterprise agents of tomorrow that we are starting to hear about.
Yeah, I mean that is a lot of things are changing, right? Innovation, both on the technology side as well as the dynamics is changing. So, has anything remained constant?
Oh yeah, of course. What remained constant is the need for clean data and an integrated framework-based approach leading to business outcomes. A framework that's going to be a foundational rock bed for generating insights, intelligence, and innovation, be it in the form of automations or Gen AI applications or even autonomous agents of tomorrow. This we believe strongly in, and it's a key area of expertise that we bring to our customers. In fact, we have actually built a framework called Consumer IQ that I encourage everyone to look at.
Well, I have to ask about the Gen AI. So, where do you see customers in their Gen AI journey?
Customers actually are in exploratory phases in the journey, particularly when it comes to core business functions, right? They're building prototypes, they're building POCs. Of course, there are business functions such as HR and sales and service ops and customer support. Those are areas that you see more of Gen AI capabilities that are going in production. But when it comes to core functions, they are still in early exploratory phases. The good thing is the noise is starting to settle down, and towards the second half of this year, and customers have started to become a little bit more focused. I know Akita is going to touch upon this particular topic again, particularly with relevance to the CPG and retail segment. However, I just want to say this: the bad data leads to bad AI. So focusing on making sure you invest and make sure the data is in the right shape is key. For that, you need to continue to invest in an integration strategy to bring the right data together. This is what I refer to as the integration framework, right? So consider this framework as your central nervous system for your organization. It can do wonders if to your bodily functions, as in making the data flow harmoniously across the various systems downstream and various applications downstream, or it can impede the optimal functionality of your system, causing inefficiencies and failures. Hope
Yeah.
that analogy resonated with you.
It does. I mean, garbage in, garbage out. So that's definitely something that has remained constant, right? Makes sense. So let's hear back again from Akhil a little bit more about how companies can integrate Gen AI, right? And why Gen AI? Like, is it because everybody's doing it? What do you think as an AI strategist?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting area, right? One, why Gen AI? Because if you take a step back, we saw fragmented data sets. So the solution for that is one word, right? Integrated. So you have it in one place and be smart about it. Your investment ROI on data investments will be truly realized if you have an integrated data set. That's the starting point. And at the minimum, for AI to be sound, we always talk about like having at least 10 to 15 variables to predict. And that is well positioned when you have a very well integrated data set. So that's the first part of the question. And how broadly is it used and where? This slide is from McKinsey's recent survey that shows how um, Gen AI is being leveraged across within an organization, across the country, across different industries. And you can see the chart here basically says percentage of respondents that have said they are using Gen AI. On the left side is for cost efficiencies, that is finding a reduction in cost. On the right side of the light blue bar is top line growth, which is revenue growth. And the shades of the bars are the magnitude of the cost efficiencies, both in terms of savings as well as revenue growth. So you can see the numbers are already crossing over the 30% threshold. So one out of 3%. And it's already significantly realized in the traditional department where you're seeking cost efficiencies, human resources, operations, supply chain on the left side. Interestingly, these departments, because they've already adopted, they're also realizing top line growth because of this, because they're able to offer more services upstream or downstream through their efficiency saving with the same resources. Nobody is talking about cutback of staff or resources. It's more about gaining more efficiencies. For this purpose, we can even focus on marketing and product innovation. You can see on the right side, 53% of the respondents said, yeah, they are using Gen AI for this purpose, for innovation purposes.
So is this mainly for larger companies, or how do you see the opportunity for mid-market companies today?
So it is for all companies, and the reason we'll see through one example here. This is another research report from Boston Consulting Group, a recent survey where they asked how important innovation is, ranking in your organization's top three priorities. So if you see here, this responses is from 2005 all the way to 2024. You can see up to COVID, pre-COVID, it was getting the momentum of being innovation being important. But post-COVID, it dropped. But you can see now everything back to the new normal is at 84% now. So that means innovation is back. It's significant. Brian illustrated about some of the broad trends that are actually driven because of innovation. So yes, it is important. If innovation is important, which I believe for almost all the organizations, small, mid, and large, this is important, Gen AI. And on the bottom right side, what you're seeing is how have organizations leveraged Gen AI and how are they experimenting it? If you have to walk away one of the number today, you can see that while half of them are already using it, 27% or close to one third of them are saying they're going to be experimenting it. So we're talking about so many things here: data set, fragmented data set, integration, leveraging Gen AI. All this 27% is telling me is use one business case or use case or jobs to be done and identify a measurable business value, customer value, and try to experiment with Gen AI. You will see a effective ROI coming from this.
I mean, ultimately, it's about driving actionable insights. So, can you illustrate how Gen AI can close this last leg of the challenge, which is driving actionable growth insights?
Yeah. So going back to link with the beverage example, Um, One of the things right off the bat is we have a conversation with the client, as simple conversation for a one pager, starting from it's so easy to understand from the analyst level to a C level. And what that canvas involves is simply talking about what is a business problem, what kind of business value are you trying to realize here, what kind of customer value are you trying to gain, whether it's improving their experience or offering them new product or actually engaging with them in a very different way, through the omni-channel complete way. Once you identify all of these things, now you can immediately go back to what Sham touched upon and what Brian touched upon is what all data sets do we need to actually bring this together. This becomes your data strategy and your integration strategy. So until this point, it's a standard traditional data integration. Now you're talking about modeling and algorithms that the Gen AI will allow you to customize. I'm not talking about just leveraging Gen AI or Chat GPT that's out there or Claude that's out there. We are talking about leveraging your internal data set, integrating it, defining what algorithms or models you're going to be using, and then making it a very predictive analytics. So in this case, the beverage company can actually leverage this to have an accelerated product development. How does the Gen AI digest all this? The thought leadership, a qualitative research report, data set, historic data set, margins that you define. Traditionally, we need to have 30% margin. In this case, this innovation needs to have around 40% margin or something like that. You can set all those guardrails. Post integration, what generally happens is organizations have to spend more resources on analysts, business insights directors to process through all this information and provide you the recommendation. Now you have an opportunity to have the same person churn out multiple sets of insights through one lens using the Gen AI where the models are customized according to your needs, the data sets are integrated, and you truly have an accelerated product development that addresses the industry, your requirement, and the consumer needs. You go beyond this to go after like predictive targeting and marketing, and you have several use cases. I know we can talk about this for a long time, but
Yes.
it requires a more deeper engagement to um, go through this process. But ROIs are much more realized when you have an integrated data set leveraged with the help of Gen AI.
Thank you. Thank you, Akhil, so much. So, we heard about the most burning challenge in the industry right now and how innovation has been a growth driver, the shift in consumer dynamics, and how companies are reacting to them. And we also learned about the importance of integration strategy to ingest and digest the data and the framework led approach. So, we also touched on the importance of Gen AI, of course, as a transformative tool. So, totally, this is something that we provide here at 2020. So get in touch with us to learn more. But before we end this webinar, we have some great questions that are coming in. So we would like to ask them to the experts here. So thank you. Let's see. The first question is we see, this is for Sham, we see a very short time duration of consumer demand trends changing. Any AI models 2020 has to get on top of this?
Um, it's interesting. Akhil just spoke about this beautifully towards the end of his segment. We are working towards building an AI model, but more importantly, and it's not going to be a straight fit for every customer. It needs to have some level of customization, and it's going to be about how much, what are the integrated data sets that are going to be required to be trained through their respective models for providing them the right level of insights and analysis. So what we are working towards is still putting through our framework the right type of data for the specific industry and coming up with some form of a standard model that could be a starting point. It is work in progress, but it won't be the ending point. It's just a starting point. Just like our framework is, you get it in place, you will have some readily available intelligence and prompts against those models that you can start with, and then from there you can tweak it and customize it to fit your specific needs.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sham. There's another question, which let me ask Brian this question. This is regarding media and marketing, and how companies are adapting to the changing media environment, and a little bit more about linear and digital advertising. Is digital advertising becoming, the key or the only thing that companies are using?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the theme is complexity, right? 20 years ago or 30 years ago, you had it wasn't a overly complicated media environment. You had TV and radio and print and outdoor, right? And I might be missing a couple, but those were the big ones. And it's changed. Now you have digital, which has created an infinite number of opportunities for companies to advertise and reach consumers in a lot of different ways. And I think the real challenge in media right now is twofold. The first is, okay, you have your traditional advertising or media vehicles like linear television, right? Still really, really important, especially for like live sporting events. It's huge, but it's eroding every year, linear TV. And more and more marketing dollars are shifting into the digital space. But when you get to that digital space, there's a couple of challenges. The first is you literally, as a branded company, you have an unlimited number of places to place your ads, right? So finding where you're going to spend your money is a challenge.
Mhm.
But on the other side of that, and I don't know if it's as thought through, is that now consumers are inundated with ads everywhere. I mean, you're just surrounded by advertising everywhere, and it just creates so much noise. So, as a branded company trying to reach consumers, you need to create ads and then deliver those ads that are going to cut through all of that noise, and actually get noticed. So you want to reach your consumers where they're at and where they are open to a message from your brand. And the more customized or personalized that message can be, the better off that you are going to be in delivering a positive impression that's remembered, right? And that's where going back to first party data is really, really important, right? Taking every single opportunity. Look, I don't know where the people on this call are from, whether you're tech people or marketing people, but even if you're a marketing person, you think of yourself as a creative, right? The reality is that the future depends on data and understanding who your consumers are at a really granular level. And I think that it's as much data as there is out there, it's challenging because as consumers might want personalized ads, but they also want their privacy and they don't like Big Brother spying on them.
Mhm.
So the best opportunity is as a brand to harvest first party data is to be invited into that consumer's life. So they are actually sharing data with you willingly, right? That's the key. And if you can do that successfully, you can build big data sets that then you can actually use for your programmatic ad buying online. I want to give a quick example. I went to a music festival in September called Bourbon and Beyond, and a lot of bourbon brands were there, but another brand was there. Ford was there, and they had a booth set up right by the entrance and exit, and near all the food, right? And there were hundreds of thousands of people at this, and they were giving away Ford Broncos. And to get a Ford Bronco, you had to get to an iPad and you had to punch in your information. And I was astounded that every time I walked past that booth, and it was 4 days, I walked past that booth a lot. I never saw maybe less than 60 or 70 people in line willingly giving up their information to get a Ford Bronco, right? So people will do it if you give them a great reason to do it. But I think it's really important that you keep that in mind through all of your activities.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. I think I'll just take one last question, which will be for Akhil. Uh, what's the starting point in the Gen AI journey?
Sure.
Where do they get started? That's the question.
How to get started? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that should be one of the best starting question for everyone is, what is your business issue? What are you trying to address? Like whether it's as small as one specific jobs to be done or a big department's goal. Once you define that, I think it makes it easy for us to be able to formulate and understand the quantifiable business value the very measurable customer value you're going to actually achieve, that should then work backwards and define now what do we need to actually understand in terms of both qualitative and quantitative data, as well as some of the inputs we would like to give based on the goal setting that we have. I think all of these three things have to come together, and that's when Gen AI becomes smarter versus hallucinating. We keep hearing this word more often, right? Is when you are able to define that and customize in house, you truly have a smart, intelligent, artificial intelligence, like a real business insights director. You can actually create, whether an analyst or a business insights director, the levels that you can create is just going to be amazing. But it all starts with your business goals, measurable business value that defines the data strategy, and then 2020 systems comes in and tells you, okay, then we need this kind of model and algorithms approach to generate out. And we also have something called training the model, which is the model learns based on the goal that you have defined, so it constantly knows to hit the target and being able to tweak along the way based on your input and the destination goal that it has set for itself. That becomes a very clear measurable outcome. And I just want to close off on a last note that Brian mentioned. So much fragmented data is out there, right? This is just going to get more and more personalized. More personalization means more bits and chunks of data. So small to big businesses actually have a challenge. Either they're going to get completely overwhelmed and start using pure intuition, or they can really adopt Gen AI and model it and direct it in a way they can get insights on.
No, this is great. We can end with hyper personalization note, and we have some more questions here, but we don't have time to address them, so we will connect with you later. But with that, we would like to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Akil, Brian, and Sham, and everybody who participated in this call. And this is our very first webinar touching on this topic. And stay tuned for future discussions and deep dives. We will continue to see you guys again soon. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.